Hi there, it's Kevin with RogueDeckBuilder.com here with this week's episode of the Market Monday. I apologize, this probably isn't going to get out till if you're seeing this on like Tuesday or Wednesday. It's because I kind of want to up my game. We're close to 25,000 subscribers. I think it's about time that I owe my community a bit more seriousness on, at least as far as aesthetics and just the content. I want a higher quality. So the Market Mondays, I'm going to try to strive for, if you go back until way back in the early days of my channel, you can see some videos called the Rogue Market, and that I added some nice little pictures and little transitions and things like that. So hopefully this video is going to be very similar to the style that was done. So this week I want to talk about Dragons of Tarkir. I've had some messages, well, you gave some advice about Origins. What about Dragons of Tarkir? Now, first of all, a little bit of a disclaimer. I don't think right now is the time to start investing in dragons. I think you have like this 4 to 6 month window. Sometimes that can even be even longer than 6 months to where to look for good deals. So instead of just like picking right now, going on to a website or going and start heavily trading for these type of cards, you just want to find really good deals. And with this video, I'm just going to try to tell you where the price points for each one of the cards that I suggest investing in is where you'd want to pick them up. Because you can make a ton of money, a ton of profit, just if you can find those good deals. So let's say, for example, a card is like a $2 card, and everyone on the internet is selling it for $2, but if you can find it for $1 or less than $1, you've already made that huge profit margin right there when the card actually will be have some demand for it. So most of the cards out of Dragons of Tarkir will have absolutely zero demand because no one is trading for them. So you have to wait like 1, 2, 3 years before the demand starts to pick up and the supply starts to dwindle. You can actually move the cards, and then a lot of times the opportune time isn't about till 4 to 5 years to sell them when they hit their peak, or at least that they've made the money that I think it is worthwhile to sell them. So the market game in Magic the Gathering is quite... There's a long term, unless you're looking for like Pro Tours and a breakout card, that's the time when you have quick investment gains. But for everything else, you have to go the long game. I mean, we're just barely starting to see like Innistrad and the Scars of Mirrodin blocks start to have enough value in them where you actually want to sell the cards. So, and those were, 4 or 5 years ago. So the same is going to be true for Dragons of Tarkir. You're going to have to sit on these cards for a while. But if you get into this whole swing of investing and selling, in 4 or 5 years, you'll start selling dragons, but then you only have to wait a year for the Battle for Zendikar specs, and then a year for the Shadows of Innistrad specs. So, I mean, every year I'm having cards. Like, I just sold a bunch of Scars of Mirrodin and Innistrad cards that I spec'd into, and these are a lot of these, like, really common and uncommon type cards that I was able to move. And so those are out of the way, and then the next year I'll start to be able to sell Ravnica cards and that I kind of spec'd into. So, again, just keep that in mind. Just a disclaimer, this is going to take a while for these cards to go up in value. So I'm just going to go over some honorable mentions from Dragons of Tarkir. Dragons of Tarkir was a dragon-based set, and we kind of joke in the finance community about how if anything has the term dragon attached to it, it's going to be worth like 25% more if it didn't say dragon, because dragon is one of the like collector cards. Dragons and angels, I would say, are the #1 cards that the card type actually affects it, just because you have so many people that collect specifically those two type of cards. And then we have the big tribal after that, where like elves and goblins, of course, are that just kind of increases their value based upon if they have the creature type of elf or goblin or whatnot. But dragons and angels specifically are very popular cards among the casual crowd or the collector crowd. So my honorable mentions is anything that deals with dragons. So you have on the whole cycle of dragons like Thunderbreak and Sunscorch, that if you can get them for bulk prices, I think that those cards are actually decent to sit on and just wait until they naturally go up in value, because they are dragons. So there was one of each color. I really like the Sunscorch and Thunderbreak. I think the rest of them are kind of weak and don't really have a lot of kitchen play. I mean, I guess the Deathbringer is okay too. The green one I think is the worst one, the worst one out of the lot, but I still think that they're not bad just to pick up at bulk, like throw-ins, 10-cent rare type things, and then sit on them for quite a while. I really like Dragon Tempest just because it has a cool little ability in a dragon tribal type deck. And what I like about tribal cards is the more cards that are printed, the better these cards get. in the long term. So Dragon Tempest is one of those cards with flying creatures or dragons that the more cards printed, the more combos are available with this card. And further down the road, I mean, if you get some fast dragon-based cards or any sort of combos that puts in a lot of dragons, this type of card can dish off a ton of damage. I would not be surprised if somehow, somewhere, further down the road, if there was like a fringe modern deck that was playable because we just have enough dragons to make it work. Same thing can be said for Descent of the Dragons, because those two combo out very well. I made a whole entire deck utilizing Dragon Tempest and Descent of Dragons for like a one-turn kill, and you never know when that is actually viable in like a strategy in either a popular kitchen table strategy or even in Modern. It's hard to break out in Modern these days, just with the power level of Modern continue to creep up, and so just keep that in mind. But I do like those cards specifically. Then, also honorable mentions, because I didn't really want to pick duh cards in this one, would be just the Dragon Lords. I think all of the Dragon Lords, especially Dragon Lord Silumgar, are really, really good things to invest in just for the casual pill. We're seeing very, very similar things happen with Theros. All of the gods have continued to go up long term, whereas more of these spiky cards like Thoughtseize have continued to go down ever since the release of or the rotation of Theros. So I like Dragon Lord Silumgar because I think it hits both of the casual appeal and competitive appeal. It's not too far off to being playable in Modern. It's a very, 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 very popular card in a green-black commander deck. And kitchen table players, it can actually be not green-black, blue-black commander. It can actually be your commander. So foils and Dragon Lord Silumgars are always something that can be picked up. And also just the regular ones. But all these I still think have a little bit room to fall before you pick up them. I'd say Dragon Lord Silumgar, even at $2 to $3, you could probably find them. And that'd be the time to really get into them because they're going for $4 right now. But I think that just starting to focus on getting good deals, getting good throw-ins with this card is good. Dragon Lord Ojutai, I think, is the best candidate for seeing play in Modern. I think that it has a very unique ability, and it's in the colors that the white-blue color control-based shells actually do love a card that has hexproof, can't be pathed on your turn. And there's a way to give it vigilance, and it always has hexproof. But swinging in, even with counter magic up on the turn after you play it, is what those decks want to do, or giving it protection, and then it just gets you an insane card advantage. But I still think Dragon Lord Ojutai does have a little more room to grow. Why had the mighty have fallen, though? This was a $30 card at one point. It's down to $4. So the Dragon Lord Ojutai, great little spec. I don't like Dragon Lord Dromoka just because the slot fights with so many other cards like Sigarda from old, and any sort of other lifelink type ability. Its ability to me isn't that unique. There's plenty in those color combinations that do similar things. In Modern, it's tough to get off just because of the 6 mana. Doesn't really completely win. I've seen it in those some Eldritch Evolution decks actually as a target. So possibly Dragon Lord Dromoka can be a nice little sideboard, but I'm not too sold on it, especially at 4. I think 4 is a bit high for one of the dragons that has the narrowest shell for it. Dragon Lord Atarka, I think, is the card that still has a lot more room to lose because Dragon Lord Atarka is around $5.50. I think it's just still played heavily in Standard. But rotation, I think it should half. And it's still another card that's decent to pick up. I've seen Commander decks using the Dragon Lord Atarka, and I've also seen a lot of casual kitchen table decks that do love the Dragon Lord. The Dragon Lord I do not like is Dragon Lord Kolaghan, just because it doesn't really see much play in the commander type shells. It does give all your creatures haste though. So I think though it's one of those things that people actually damn it for its positive ability. So I mean, if you were just to look at Dragon Lord Kolaghan as a 6/5 flying haste, other creatures you control have haste, I think people would love the card. But then they think it's a negative thing that it can't be played in Commander, or the secondary ability can't be played in Commander because they're never going to cast a card with the same name in the graveyard because Commander only has one ofs. But I think that this card also could see possibly Modern play in the right shell. I have a hard time seeing that. I mean, it is very aggressive with 6/5, haste, and other creatures have haste, where this card has seen Legacy and Legacy Dredge decks as a replacement for the Flamekin Zealot, but I think they've kind of gone back away from that type of card. There's other ways to. So basically what they do is they mill it in their graveyard, and then you can get it back with the a card where you can sacrifice 3 creatures to bring a creature back from your graveyard onto the battlefield. And I've seen Dragonlord Kolgon used in that slot because then it gives all of your other cards haste and you can swing in for lethal. And it's got the 6/5 body on it. So keep that in mind. It has seen legacy play. So I think Dragonlord Kolgon, though, is the least exciting to me, but they're all exciting. I think that they're going to be very similar to the gods in the long term. Other honorable mentions, I always like picking up Planeswalkers at their lowest just because Planeswalkers seem to be a collector's item. The problem with Planeswalkers, though, is I think we're getting a little oversaturated. Every set having 3, 4, 5 even now of, well, usually around 2 to 4 Planeswalkers per set. And I think that there's just way too many of them, and I think that collectors in command, or the casual collectors that specifically pick Planeswalkers, might be a little bit tired of trying to keep up their Planeswalker collection with that many. But both these Planeswalkers are quite low, $7 for Narset and the $4 for Sarkhan Unbroken. Sarkhan is definitely a kitchen table. It's in Teamer, which is a very, very popular color combination. It puts out dragons. It draws cards. It's same with Narset. Narset just has a lot of possibilities I think Narset could see play in Modern. I think it has in the past in a white-blue control shell. It just gets outshined by some of the other format of Planeswalker-type cards, like even in a control shell, cards like Elspeth and Gideon just seem to be a little bit better for that slot. But I think Narset is one of those cards that could be a sleeper. If it goes down under $4, it could be a card that you could pick up. Also, there is a few other... Like I do like the cycle of uncommons that had specific color hate to them, like Rending Volley. I think they're a little bit, Rending Volley specific is a little bit high to try to start picking up, but if you can get those for bulk cards, that's not a bad idea. Speaking of bulk uncommons and commons, I like to try to target one of them each set, just where I just look out for them in bulk bins, look out for them in people just casually ask, hey, do you have any of these? My bulk common for this set is going to be Impact Tremors. I think the Impact Tremors is a card that gets better and better and better as time goes on. It definitely has the power level in Modern. You can already do some infinite combos with it in Modern, or at least infinite damage, just if you can get things cycling. One of those is just like in a Heartless Summoning deck where you just bring back the Mere Retrievers over and over and over and over and over again as they cost 0 and bring them back, and then Impact Tremors can be used as your kill condition. The thing is, though, that now with those type of strategies, there's a lot of cards that actually already can do that. I mean, that's Alter the Brute will mill your opponent out. Perforos is just another card that dishes off better damage that you can still get out quite early with the Heartless Summoning. But just keep in mind, the Impact Tremors is the budget version of these infinite combo type things, and I really do like the Impact Tremors as just the common. Just keep setting those aside. Make sure that you don't throw them away or lose them. Just set them aside. It can be something like Moon Mist, or what was the one? Yeah, from Innistrad that are now up to $1. Like these common cards that are up to $1 that actually have real world value. So that's my pick for the common. My pick for the uncommon is Self-Inflicted Wound. Why I like Self-Inflicted Wound is it's seeing play in Mardu Burn, and you will actually see in Jund Burn when they like that variety. I've tried all the burns throughout the history of Burn, and I like Jund Burn a ton. A lot of people like Naya Burn because it gives access to Boros Charm, but if Black ever has any more of these Burnesque type cards, why I like it is you've got the 1-mana Lava Spike. What is that one called? That has flashback from Dark Ascension. And then Self-Inflicted Wound kills all of your usual suspects in Modern. Like, you really need to take care of Tarmogoyf. It will get rid of an early Birds and still do 2 damage. So Self-Inflicted Wound is really, really good for white and green based decks. If it's not in... I think you can almost safely put it in the main. I think it definitely will be relegated to a sideboard card in either Mardu or Jund Burn. But I do like that. I always like picking those type of cards up. It could also see play if a mono black aggro deck ever does become a thing in Modern. Self-Inflicted Wound, I think, is the perfect card for the sideboard. So those are kind of my honorable mentions or other things that I'm focusing on with the set. So on to my number 10. My number 10, let's just get the elephant out of the room, because everyone and their mother will be focusing on this card if it does get low enough. It was in a event deck, I believe, So the amount of these are out there like crazy, and this card just continues to fall and fall and fall in value. I like to really compare this to cards like Court of Calling, Scavenging Ooze, Mutavault, Inkmoth Nexus, cards that have bottomed out after they rotated out of Standard, but were such a staple card in Modern that I think that it'll recover 2 years down the road and start to make your money back, and will always be an archetype unless it gets banned. And of course, the card I'm talking about is Collected Company. However, my strategy of investing this is a lot more not as aggressive, I'd say, than most people. So currently it's around 11.50. I think that's way too high for a Collected Company. It will continue to fall, much like Court of Calling did, and again, Scavenging Ooze. I think that we're going to see Collected Company down to the $7, $6, $5 range. And that's the time I think you should pick Collected Companies up. I'm not going to pick up Collected Companies if they never do go down to that range. But if for some reason they do, that's the time to really pull the trigger on Collected Company. It's already proven itself. It is a 4 of in the archetypes that it's in. More cards that get printed, the better this card gets. And I have a hard time thinking that Wizards will ever print a card that is on the power level of Collected Company, as they just saw it was just too good. I think we'll see some ripoffs of Collected Company, but they're going to be at sorcery speed. They're going to be a lot more narrow. There's never ever going to be a card in green at instant speed this good, just because of how bad it warped Standard for the time that it was in Standard. So pick them up. The good thing about what I like about Coco is the supply is very high, and there just might be like these more spiky Standard players that are getting out of their Bant Coco decks that maybe don't want to play Modern, that just want to get out of them and for newer base cards. So where you target this is just you value it at $5 and you trade it for your Kaladesh cards you pick up at your pre-release. So that would be my best strategy with the Collected Company. Again, this card has seen so much play, it's not going anywhere in Modern. Number 9. Number 9 is another card that is kind of broken out in Modern and has had breakouts in Standards. It actually was an $8 card at one point, but suffers from the same problem that Collected Company suffers from, as it was printed in Intro deck, I believe. It might be another place too, but I do believe it was in an Intro pack. So this is Secure the Waste. Currently they're at $2. Secure the Waste sees plenty of play in Modern right now. In fact, some of the decks that it sees play in Modern, this is the win con. So it's just control, and then Secure the Waste. We're talking about like the Jeskai controls. I've seen it in white-blue control, with Celestial Colonnade and Secure the Waste being the only win conditions. I've also seen it in white-black tokens in Modern, and even in some other heavier control-based decks, white-black control, I've seen Secure the Waste just be the win con as well. And it has other ways to maybe even pump them up with like a Gideon type trigger. So I mean, end of turn you can Secure the Waste and then emblem Gideon and then just win. We've seen that tons of times in Standard. And just the problem with it, I'm a little bit hesitant about Secure the Waste, is it also just has a lot of cards out there, being in an intro pack and some other, I believe it was in something else too. So there's tons and tons of them out in the multiverse. On to number 8. Oh, one thing else about Secure the Waste is one of the best token generating cards that scales. The scalability of the card, which means that it's good on turn 2 onward. Like turn 2 it's a little bit weak, turn 3 it's really good to get 2 at instant speed. I mean, hell, that is basically just the 1/1 Spirit, 2/1/1 Spirits, the flash card, instant speed, power level. But then it just scales turn 3, turn 4, turn 5, turn 6. It starts getting more and more powerful as you add one card. So I really like that for that reason as well. All right, on number 8, I'm just a little bit hesitant with this card because it might be Tidebinder Mage all over again. What I mean by that is, a lot of you may remember I went all in on Tidebinder Mage. I think I bought over 400 copies of Tidebinder Mage, and then the next set they printed just a better card for that slot with the card of Harbinger of the Tides. So I still don't think that my Tidebinder Mage was a bad spec with the information I had. It was seeing play as a 4 of in Merfolk at the time. It was a great way to slow down the Collected Company type decks using Birds of Paradise and Noble Hierarch. It also can tap down a Glistener Elf indefinitely until they can actually deal with it. It was good even for Tarmogoyfs until they could deal with it. But the Merfolk deck just thought that Harbinger was a bit better. It was easier to abuse with like the the Aether Vial, and it didn't really have the problem of only having red or red or green creatures. You could just take care of any creature, and we still do see Tidebinder Mates in sideboard, but Harbinger Ties is usually the go-to card is the 4 of in the main board, 3 or 4 of in the main board of Merfolk. So it wasn't really that Tidebinder Mage fell out of or was a bad card. It just got overshadowed by a better card. So my number 8 might have the same problem, which is Anafenza Kin Tree Spirit. Right now, people are starting to just go the Eldritch Evolution route with the Spike Feeder and the Archangel of Thune. But old school, even Anafenza and company had an entire deck named after it. This was the piece that you wanted to get with the Kitchen Finks and eventually the Saraseer, the old Birthing Pod toolbox deck, and eventually just scry into the Murderous Redcap, and the Murderous Redcap just keeps coming back and bolstering itself over and over and over for infinite damage. So it is a focal point. I've seen as much as a 3 of, even a 4 of in certain decks with Anafenza. And it's fallen out of favor recently just for the Eldritch Evolution, but people might just want to go back to the Anafenza, or just have that as another card that's an option in that type of deck. So I do like Anafenza. It's down to $1.50, which is right around where I like to start picking them up. Just because I think you can find them for 50 cents, 75 cents, and that's where I would target them. They under the dollar, and try to get these in throw-ins. So you have an $8 trade and an $8 trade to your pre-release, like, hey, will you throw in that Anafenza? These are free upgrades, basically. This is where I like to target them, especially if you're if you have a big store or a lot of stores in your area, just go from one to the next to the next to the next. And then just if you're one of those, that's how I got my collection back too, is I go to one shop, trade for a bunch of cards, then go to another shop, trade for a bunch of cards, then go to another. Just kind of choose a different shop on your Friday Night Magics, and then do a lot of trading in between. All right, number 7 is kind of another dub, but I really like these cards. I think Dragon's Star Care is the opposite of Origins. Origins to me seems like a lot of like casual-based cards, and some are pretty powerful. But Dragons has a lot of, especially this cycle, were very competitive, very spike-centric type cards, and have seen play in Modern. At least 3 of these have seen a lot of play, and one of them has seen a little bit of play in Modern. 2 of them are actually very, very big staples in very powerful and tier 1 strategies that aren't going to go anywhere. And these are the commands. So the most played one, I believe, is going to be Atarka's Command, just because it's just such a staple in Niaburn or green. Yeah, Niaburn is usually the flavor that uses the Atarka's Command. It also has seen play in some of these Naya Zoo-based decks, and just any red-green aggro-based strategy likes the Atarka's Command. It's holding at $5 right now, which I think is insanely low for a card that is just so good in Modern format. I think it has a little bit more room to grow down to the $4 mark, though, so I think that you can pick up Atarka's Command for under $4, but this is what I think is probably the safest investment in the set, because as I said before, I like to target cards from Modern for under $5. I think that's where they typically bottom out. Scavenging Ooze, Mutavault, Court of Calling, Inkmoth Nexus, these are all really, really, really good examples of where is the low for a Modern staple. So I think the Atarka's Command's already there. It could go a little bit further, though. We are in a different generation of printing, where they print way more, and there's a lot more standard players than there's Modern players at the moment. But you always see this influx of new Modern players every time a standard set rotates, and then you'll get more people in Modern. And if Wizards ever does decide to support the format again, then we'll have a huge influx in the people going into Modern. So yeah, I hope that there's a Pro Tour again with Modern in the near future, and not just having it relegated to just partial on like Worlds and other type of like Grand Prix. So the other command, which sees a ton of play, it's fallen out of favor a tiny bit in Jund just because they've gone a different route, is the Kolaghan's Command, which is just insanely good. It keeps affinity in check, discards, does 2 damage, gets you back a creature, destroys an artifact. All those are so relevant in Modern. Right now, it's still about $6, so I think it can go down to the $4 mark again. He's playing Grixis and Jund. Both of those have traditionally been Tier 1 decks for years now. I don't think they're going anywhere, and this is just a pivotal piece. It's a very, very popular card to use in conjunction with Snapcaster Mage. It is also very good with Liliana because it can keep you with the card advantage. You can get back a Dark Confidant or a Tarmogoyf, or even something you pitched with Liliana, and then destroy an artifact, make him discard another card, do 2 damage. If Bloodbraid Elf ever becomes unbanned, which people, the rumor mill is saying Bloodbraid Elf is being unbanned because it's legal in Modern on the beta of MTGO or some new MTGO thing. Some little rumor I've heard somewhere with that. Then of course Kolaghan's Command is just going to skyrocket in value because I think it's probably the best thing to hit with Bloodbraid Elf. So if the Bloodbraid Elf ever does come back, Kolaghan's Command will be a 4 of. There's no, you want to hit Kolaghan's Command. It has the most bang for its buck in the Jund type. Sometimes Liliana is good to hit, but all the time Kolaghan's Command is good to hit. Alright, so another one is Jamoka's Command. Jamoka's Command is currently $2.50. This one will go down to $1, mark my words. I believe it wasn't it in a dual deck as well? Or an event deck or something like that. I think it was. So I think Jamoka's Command will go down $1. I think this is where you want to hit it because I think that this deck will just get better if we ever do have a white creature-based aggro, green-white creature-based aggro strategy that is a little bit better than Hate Bears. But Hate Bears is starting to get on the power level where it needs to be, and Jamoka's Command I think is actually pretty decent in Bant Eldrazi. It's surprising they haven't picked it up in that because just hitting him with Reality Smasher seems pretty good. Put him +1 counter and killing something with Reality Smasher, yeah, it doesn't seem bad at all, and they're already in those colors. So I think Jamoka's Command will be adopted later on in Modern. It's seen some play before in Modern, but it's just lost favor just because of that archetype. Most of the green-white base decks don't really have room for those type of cards. Kills enchantments too, so if there's ever an enchantment-based Modern strategy that is really, really powerful, that's going to be an auto-include in sideboards. The other one is Ojutai's Command. Ojutai's Command is very, very seldomly played in Modern, but it has seen some play in some Scapeshift decks that run Bring to Light. So just keep that in mind. It has seen some play. I've also seen it in some Sun Titan variants that use white and blue as a way to get back just martyrs and things like that. And I'm sure that it's fine in some control-based shells too, because it's almost like Cryptic Command Light. You can counter creature and draw a card, and that's exactly what these type of cards like to do at the 4-mana slot. So Ojutai's Command, don't overlook it. It's $1.50 right now. I think you can find it for way low because it was the Buy a Box promo, and it is the pre-releases then had a high chance, I believe, to have them in, and all the commands for the foil, I believe, if someone correct me if I'm wrong. So I think that 75 cents is a good time to start picking these up. Maybe 50 cents, 40 cents even. I don't think is really out of the question to find people that are willing to unload Ojutai's Command. Again, you have the option to get those foil buy-a-box ones. The last one is Silumgar's Command. Silumgar's Command has seen a tiny bit of play in Modern, but it's 5 mana. 5 mana is kind of hard, but it does have some very relevant modes in the format. So I think that do not overlook Silumgar's Command. If you can get them for bulk price, that's probably where I would. 35 cents and lower is where I target Silumgar's Command, because it's one of those cards you never know in a breakout shell. As a 1 of or 2 of 5 years down the road, it's gonna be worth $1.50, and that's just a great return at that point. All right, on to our number 6. The number 6 is a card that I love picking up these cards. They're a little bit risky, but I think they get better. The more cards that are printed, the better this card gets. And this card is Assault Formation. Assault Formation turns your creature's toughness into power. So any creature that is just busted good with having a high defense gets really better then, as it can now be a very aggressive card. It also can turn defenders into attackers, so it has casual appeal there. I have seen so many kitchen table decks run Assault Formation. It's currently at $1. I think it will go down to 50 cents, and this one has kind of remained stable at $1, so it might not actually go down to 50 cents. These are the cards that I love because casual, never ever underestimate casual. Casual, we've seen cards that I have no business seeing play in any sort of serious deck go up to $2, $3, $4 in the Innistrad. Just think of Endless Ranks of the Dead. That card is just really expensive. I think it's around $5 now, and it's just such a casual card. I think Assault Formation perfectly fits this bill. I think that we've also seen this. We've seen some fringe decks in Modern run Assault Formation and been decently successful. So I would not underestimate the card's power level. I think that it's right on par for something that is reasonable in Modern. So again, the more toughness-based creatures that are printed, the better this card gets. I think it's just an A+ to invest in. Number 5 is another card that just gets better and better with more cards printed. Has a very aggressive curve being 2 mana, and has it can just these are, I would call this a deck you see every now and again in Modern, which is just mono green Stompy. And this card is just insanely good in that deck. It's Avatar of Resolute. It's $1 right now. It is pretty good by itself with the having the trample on it. And just any other cards that have +1/+1 counters. We're entering another set. So many sets in a row that have wanted to use 1/1 counters, but Kaladesh actually has quite a bit of 1/1 counters, so Reach is also not bad. You can block Lingering Soul tokens, you can block Delver of Secrets with the Avatar of the Resolute. It is a 3/2 for 2 mana with Trample, so it's just a strict upgrade to like Garrick's Companion. It's got double green Devotion, which is actually relevant in that sort of deck because a lot of them are running Aspect of the Hydra. And yeah, so again, if there's any 1-drop that puts in one, like a very aggressive 1-drop that puts a +1/+1 counter immediately on it, it's really good. It's good after a turn 2 if there's something that adds a lot of +1/+1 counters. It's another thing that scales quite well. So on turn number 2, it's at least a 3/2. Turn number 3, it's a lot of times going to be a 4/3. Turn number 4, you can get it easily up to a 5 or a 6, depending on how many creature with counters on it. So it scales very well. It has that +1/+1 counter type ability to it, and I think that it is going to get better and better with the more of those type of cards that are printed. So Avatar Resolute, green aggro is one of those decks that is very cheap to build in most formats. I steer a lot of players towards mono green in Modern just because of how easy it is. It's really budget, really cheap to actually build, and the power level is pretty decent. It's fast. It can compete with the zoo based decks, go over the top of them, and it can actually hold its own against other aggressive based decks. I've easily been able to race burn, for example. Alright, so we have on to the number 4, which is Risen Executioner. If there ever is a zombie that has a tribal-based +1/+1 ability, Risen Executioner is the way to go. It still is a little bit high, I think, for Risen Executioner, just because it's got some price memory for people thinking that it was going to see a ton of play in Standard, as we were going into a zombie-based deck. So of course, that fell flat. But it is around $2.50 right now. I think you can get away with this going down to under $2. It is a mythic, though, and that's what I like about it. Just look at some other zombie-based lords out of the past. I mean, it's a tribal that everyone loves to build in Commander. We have some of them reaching up to like $17, $18 with the similar type abilities. So I think the Risen Executioner is going to go into all of the zombie fanboys from here on out to the end of eternity. It's not a bad little ability being able to get it back, even though you have to pay more, and that's kind of like what we call a non-bow, because most zombie have a little bit of a self-mill type strategy to it, which, yes, you do want to mill Risen Executioner because you can get it back for free, or just by casting it for a little bit more for each creature in your graveyard. But people are like, well, zombies will have tons more in it. It's going to cost too much to get it back. Still a Lord, though. Still an aggressive one. Still gives everything a +1/+1. I actually really like the card. I think that it's again, going to be a kitchen table favorite. Look at Endless Ranks of the Dead. Look at all these other zombie-based cards. This one's just a no-brainer that's going to go in those. Speaking of mythics that just hold a ton of casual appeal, it's got a win con and ramp built into it. It's the legal version of Biorhythm in Commander, which is Shaman of the Forgotten Ways. Shaman of the Forgotten Ways did see a recent little bit of spike because people thought it was going to see play in these emerge type decks, just because it's another one that can actually ramp them out pretty quickly. It's the best we have in Standard at the moment for ramping out creatures. A 2/3 is not terrible for 3. And then to be able to add mana to cast a creature, of course, is also pretty good. You can go from a turn 3 into a turn 6, 6-drop after the Shaman. I'm actually quite surprised that we haven't seen a Shaman of the Forgotten Ways into Oblivion Sower type decks, then into like Ulamog later on. It's just, I think that just Bant is just too good at the moment, especially the Spell Queller. Spell Queller just put that deck over the top, and it really punishes decks that try to rely on 3-mana type spells. So I think that there's also, now we got a lot of 3 damage base spells like Fiery Temper and the other 3 damage spell, I can't think of it right now. Even Collected Defiance, cards like that, just keeping Shaman of the Forgotten way down. But this again is the casual pill. It's Biorhythm that's legal in the Commander. So it's got all these alternate win conditions in Commander are going to be popular. It's a card that will help ramp out commanders. All commanders are creatures, so it's gonna be a no-brainer in a lot of these green base decks. So I think $2.50 is actually probably right where you want to start looking at this card, as it is a mythic, but I would not be surprised you can get it $2 or less type range. On to number 2. This is my spec that I am going out on a limb, being very risky, but I think that you should pick these up for 10 cents a piece or 15 cents a piece. So look for these in your bulk bin. This is Commune with Lava. Commune with Lava is one of those cards that I think that people just don't understand at the point how to break it. I've actually tried it in a Skred-based deck. It kind of gets interesting with Chandra, the new Chandra, because it's another way to add some mana on the turn after you cast the Chandra, and just get an insane amount of card advantage and just go through your deck. So Commune with Lava is 2 red and X, and then you exile the top X cards of your library, and you can play them until the end of your next turn. So keep that in mind. With a Koth negative or a Chandra plus, then you can actually get a lot of mana, dump all of your mana into it that turn, and still have an entire turn to cast all of those cards. So it's instant speed too, which is crazy. I've used it in Storm-based decks. I've actually used it in Waste Not Storm, as you can generate a ton of mana, and a lot of times you just don't have the right. You need some way to use that mana, and then the next turn is probably where you're going to be able to utilize the discard again, or making people draw cards. You don't want to do it on the same turn, or you don't have the cards quite yet. So Commune with Lava, dumping in all your Waste Not mana, or the Koth mana, or your Chandra can actually pump towards it, is going to get you that win con. A lot of times that's the problem with these decks, is they have specific win conditions. I think it's an alternate card you can use for Storm. I've tried it out. It's pretty decent in Storm-based decks. You just, especially like even a mono red Storm, you just ramp up, and then go Commune with Lava, and then you have all those cards in your graveyard that you've ramped up for, and then you probably hit the Past in Flames or Reforge the Soul or whatever you want to cast to refill back up your hand, and then you have an entire, it's like drawing, X is basically like drawing that many cards. You can play one of those lands on the following turn, so it's not terrible for that. But I think this card is incredibly underrated and gets better with the more cards printed, and is already at that bulk price. I'm pretty sure you can find them in the bulk bins, and you can target them as just throw-ins, easily target them in with throw-ins. So definitely keep your eye out for Commune with Lava. Keep your eye out for decks that use Commune with Lava, because it could be one of those just breakout cards that goes from a 10-cent card to a $3 card overnight. As you know, that's typical for Modern. That's, I think, where your Modern gains are going to be found now, is just in these currently unknown cards that actually do see play. Last but not least, we're going over 35 minutes for this, is going to be Sidisi, Undead Vizier. This card is $2.50. I like to call this now I can't even think of the Cyclonic Rift of this set. What I mean by that is, if anyone plays Commander, Cyclonic Rift goes in every blue deck. You just put it in there. It's just so good. And I think Sidisi is very similar to that. I think just every black deck wants it. Maybe some decks that don't utilize it because they don't use a lot of creatures. But just Sidisi is just a tutor on a creature, meaning it's very easy for you to get similar, like anything that gets it back allows you to re-tutor again and again and again. So flicker effects. My Marquesa deck loves this, or Marchesa loves this card. Sidisi also, I've seen a lot of commanders just use Sidisi as the commander, as it's just a way to continue to cast the cards that tutor, and then find all your little combos and whatnot. And it's almost on power level. I've actually seen a few decks in Modern run it as just like a toolbox based decks. It's another way to go get a specific card in them. Like Eldritch Evolution is kind of cool with this card, because you can actually Sidisi and then go get Eldritch Evolution, which then you can kill it and then go get Elish Norn, as Elish Norn is 5. So Sidisi it gets better and better and better with the cards that can exploit it. There are tons of cards that can flicker it, that can cheat it into play, for example, like going back to the Heartless Summoning type decks. I think that it's really Sidisi can actually kill herself to go tutor up a card. The card is just on power level as far as can it see play in Modern, check. Does it see a lot of casual appeal? Check. Is it a zombie? Check. Is it a card that Commander wants? Check, check, check. And all of a sudden you have the perfect storm for a card that is absolutely 100% going to go up in value as time goes on. So I think that I'm going to start targeting Sidisi a very, 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 very highly, even though it is a rare in sets where mythics are worth less than this. But it's I think you can find it for $2. I think foils are actually even better to try to target just because of the casual appeal to this. The card is just, again, fits all of the check marks. Check it off, check it off. Everything you look for in an investment, it's Sidisi. So that is my pick. Alright, so we're over this little top 10 list. Took me 40 minutes to ramble through it again. It's going to require me a ton of editing, so I will get this out on a decent time. Hope you enjoyed this video. This has been Kevin with RogueDeckBuilder.com. If you have any market-related questions, be sure to tweet at me at RogueDeckBuilder. You can Facebook me, email me. Do not use the YouTube message. I never get them, but you can comment in this comment section below. Happy hunting, and thanks for watching.